Good evening and welcome to Richmond Public School Board Governance Committee meeting, June 10th, 2021. Ms. Lilly?
This meeting is being held as an electronic meeting pursuant to and in compliance with Richmond City Council's Ordinance 2020-093, adopted April 9th, 2020, and extended by Ordinance number 2020-183, adopted August 20th, 2020, and by Ordinance number 2020-232, adopted December 14th, 2020, and the school board's resolution approved on April 20th, 2020. Simultaneous translation is being provided in Spanish via Zoom, and the meeting notice contained information on how individuals needing translation services could obtain the service. The meeting notice also stated that the meeting would be a virtual meeting and would be live streamed for the public on the school division's Facebook page, and the link was provided. The agenda of the meeting was posted to board docs. And after a roll call, we will state how many board members are participating at this time. Dr. Harris Mohammed.
Present.
Ms. Page. I can't see, did she come on? I can't see her yet. Ms. White.
Present.
Ms. Jones.
Here.
Now we have 3 members of your committee participating at this time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good evening, ladies. And so tonight we are here to discuss the purpose of this meeting, which is the governance committee, and we are establishing a new, let the record show that Ms. Page is coming in right at the moment. So we are here to discuss the purpose of this meeting, and this is to build and develop a new governance manual for School Board 2021. And we'll be looking at and discussing some of our policies. We'll be discussing the purpose and development of the governance operational manual, and then next steps. And our next meeting dates, and so how this process is going to unfold. And so because it's a new process for us, today is really just used to have some discussion around what we would like to see as we're building this manual, and then go over a few action items that are already in place, such as our policy for school board conduct and some information that we received from the Virginia Department of Education. So at this time, I would like to discuss, how and why we are at this, how and why we are beginning this conversation about this governance manual. So I wanted to point out that per the memorandum of understanding, the Richmond City School Board and the central office staff will adopt 5 key priorities and implement corrective action plan, essential actions to comply with the 5 key priorities and standards of quality in order to improve student achievement. And so that statement comes from our MOU that we have with the Virginia Department of Education. I apologize. And with that being said, while there is no official policy or why it's not a part of the memorandum of understanding, this governance manual will be built as an extension of that MOU. And some of the five quality measures that we're using as a part of this memorandum of understanding is operations and support, human resource leadership, community relations and communications, and leadership and governance. And also academics and student success. So part of this governance manual that we will be building will lean on the leadership and governance as it is established with the VDOE's MOU. Any questions? Can I repeat the 5? Yes, ma'am. So academics and student success, leadership and governance, operations and support services, human resource leadership, community relations, and communications. And those are the 5 key priorities and the standards of quality in order to improve student achievement that were identified in the MOU that we have with the Virginia Department of Education. And so this manual, again, is being, being designed as an extension of that leadership and governance piece in the VDOE MOU. Any questions? No? Okay, great. You're muted, Dr. Harris Mohammed.
I was talking to myself out loud. I was saying not yet, to myself.
Okay. Okay, cool. So since we don't have any questions at this time, we can review our school board policy. Miss Lily, is it possible for you to be able to share your screen? You muted.
Let me pull that up, the policy, just one moment, please.
Mm-hmm. And while she's pulling it up, I figured that we, could take a look at the policy of standards of conduct as a example, because we will use this policy as well to be as a part of the board governance manual, because since there's a policy that is already in place, I thought the best place for us to start would be to look at that as we're again building what we would like this manual to entail, what we would like to go inside of it, because I do think that part of the policy will be something that could be added as an appendix. And I do know that we also have our governance training coming up with VSBA. So a lot of things that we want to talk as it relates to our norms and how we will govern as a board will also be discussed in that meeting. So tonight we will use this meeting specifically for the purposes of the manual.
I'm sorry, I closed out of everything, which I hit the wrong button. Let me share my screen. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Lily.
Sure.
And so I don't want to read the entire policy, but this policy was adopted by the board January 16th, 2018. And again, for the purposes of being able to develop this board governance manual, I thought it was important and really key to look at the policies that were already in place and what already exists so that we don't duplicate efforts and that we're not basically putting the same information within the manual. So I did want to look at policy, the first policy that we do have. Actually, let me read the introduction of the policy. So recognizing that persons holding a position of public trust are under constant observation by the media and interested city residents, and recognizing that maintaining the integrity and dignity of the public office is essential for maintaining high levels of public confidence in institutions of government. Every member of the school board shall adhere to the following procedures and standards of conduct. The policy numbers that I'd like for us to just review tonight would be number 1, number 9, and number 10. And so for number 1, I'll read it. It says, while attending meetings and otherwise conducting the business of school board, every member shall conduct himself, herself in a professional and courteous manner and encourage community involvement to include working to create a positive environment in public meetings where citizens feel comfortable in their roles as observers or participants. Avoiding during public meetings and during the performance of public duties the use of abusive, threatening, or intimidating language or gestures directed at colleagues, citizens, or personnel. Maintaining an attitude of courtesy and consideration toward all colleagues. Being tolerant by allowing citizens, employees, or colleagues sufficient opportunity to present their views, and being respectful and attentive and avoiding comments, body language, or distracting activities that conveys a message of disrespect during presentations from citizens, personnel, or colleagues. Any questions
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, if I may ask, I do apologize. I had to take a call when you were explaining what we were gonna do tonight, and then I believe you stated that what we were going to, and please correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
accomplish tonight was going to roll over to our governance training on the 22nd. That's in summary, in short version of what you said.
No, that's correct. So
Okay.
we have a couple of things happening. So we have our board governance training. We have our policy, which is school board procedures and standards of conduct. And then we have the manual that we are developing. And
Mhm.
so what I wanted us to take a look at was the policy to see what already exists.
Mhm.
Knowing that we have the school board governance training coming up on the 27th, we know that some of those norms will also more so roll over into the manual.
Mhm.
And then the policies that are already in effect, how does that fit into the manual as well?
Okay, so just for clarity for the public, school board governance training on the 22nd, where we are scheduled to complete the norms that we need to complete, which will also go hand in hand with our governance manual to in short term of how we govern as a school board. And then the policy that we're looking at right now, the purpose is to review, revise, update if necessary, which will, upon board approval, be a part of the governance manual.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so because again, like I said, there are, so many different variables and so many pieces right now, we can't just take one and create the manual. We kind of got to look at all of them so that we're not creating a manual that exists, that if we already have all of these in the policy, or if we already have all of them in the norms, we don't want to have, we don't want to, again, take the time to build. We want to be able to extend, make this an extension of what pretty much already exists.
Correct. I think that finishing the norms on the 22nd is really going to be able to guide us how we move forward in our meetings, and also how our governance manual is developed. That's my professional opinion. I also think that operating outside of, and I know this meeting was a sense of urgency because when a sample of our governance manual is due, but operating outside of having our norms completed and accepted by the board, to me, is working backwards. But I do understand what you're saying, because that's a variable. It just so happens that the governance training is scheduled after this meeting, which was scheduled after we received the letter from the Office of School Improvement. So just so for the public to get a timeline of why this is happening now, that's why.
Yeah.
Those other variables occurred before June the 22nd at 5:30.
Correct.
And I think, Ms. Lilly, if possible, I'm sure VSBA could get a copy of this, but I think this should work in conjunction with discussing the completion of our norms on June the 22nd, if possible, because our only purpose that evening is to finish the norms. That's the only thing on the agenda, so we can move forward and continue to move forward as a governing body. But whenever we get to what should go in the manual, as I shared earlier, much earlier, I have some notes that I would like to share.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's, like you said, based upon the urgency of the timeline that we, want to meet for the manual, I did think that it was pertinent that we had this discussion and that we all, kind of put out there what exists, and then knowing what we need to do in order to create the manual. So yes, the governance training is for the norms for us to finish. And I think that those kind of focus more so on how we show up as a board and the light that we're showing up in during formal meetings. But then also, you know, there are other pieces to the policy as well as the newly devised manual that I think will be our operating handbook that we'll be able to use, and it should be able to carry on, you know, beyond us.
Do we have a governance manual currently, Ms. Lilly?
You have your bylaws.
Our bylaws, okay.
Yes, and
But that's
that
not
is-
a manual. That's not.
and that is
governance
not, that
manual.
is not,
Right.
that is not a manual per se. There are elements that if you look at the samples that you've all got from the Department of Education, or
Mhm.
I think that's where it came from. So I don't want to misspeak. But anyway, the samples that have been forwarded, you'll see elements of your bylaws in the manual. So it's all kind of interchangeable. And then in one example, you'll see the manual and then they attach your bylaws as your as an attachment. So you're using kind of your bylaws to do both. And so that's why it's important, I think, as Ms. Jones said, and you mentioned, I think you may have mentioned as well, to look at what you have, because it's going to overlap. It's overlapping right now. And so, you know, so it's nothing that's named governance manual, but your bylaws have elements of that in your, you know, already in your policy.
Okay,
Ms.
thank
White.
you.
Ms. White, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I did have a question. Looking at, I have to agree with my colleague. Looking at number 1, I'm not sure how you want to do this tonight, or we're just looking at it, because we need more meat in there. I can see that we need more meat, and I know that it will come from the norms and protocol, because this bylaw, number 1, has existed on the board for a long time. I think probably 2007. It just keeps going over this number 1. But they're based on our board, and every board changes, and everybody has their own personality. There are some more things need to be added into this one, I can see.
Thank you, Ms. White. Ms. Page?
Yes, thank you. Just a comment. So I also see the manual as our guiding principle to, I guess, to fine tune our norms. And also we need to keep in mind that our policies, they are reviewed through a cycle in conjunction with Attorney Lilly, because she has a cycle of policies that we review. And so as over a period of time, all the policies are reviewed. But like you said, Ms. White, some policies need to have a little bit more meat in it based on the governing body. But I totally agree. But if we agree to these norms and putting everything in place in our manual, we have to police ourselves to ensure that we are following policies and procedures and our board norms.
Great comment.
Thank you, Ms. Page. And I think that's pretty much the goal of this manual, is to build a sense of accountability and build a sense of commitment, right, to our roles and to the work that we are doing as this governing body. And I think that there is a lot of, and I don't, you know, there's a lot of, as you all mentioned, overlap, but then there's also a lot of, there's not a lot of clarity, you know, and so some of this stuff can be get misconstrued because it overlaps so much. And so I think, again, this manual will allow us to be clear on what those operational norms are going forward. Any other questions? Y'all making this real. So at this time, then we can begin our discussion about the development of the government's operational manual. Thanks, Ms. Lilly.
You're welcome.
You have okay. Dr. Harris Mohammed.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I spelled it wrong. I was too quick at the draw. So I was thinking when I was doing my homework, I brought some suggestions to the table because several manuals were sent to us, and several of them were thick. But I also took a preview of what our current school board policy was in terms of school board member roles, relationships, role of the chair, role of the vice chair, just those, I don't want to say basic policies, but policies that we have that's a part of governing us. So what I was thinking or would like to share with this committee is that, one, because in developing the governance operational manual, you can name it a couple of different things. I went on a couple of different school divisions website. They call it their strategic governance manual because their strategic plan is a part of the governance manual. I think that's a great idea for us because we are in relationship with the Office of School Improvement through a memorandum of understanding. So I think those things should be noted in our governance manual. Our operating protocols, operating norms, definitely that should be a part of our governance manual along with our code of conduct. That should, these are things that I researched and noted to share with you all. Also, just to include the role of our school board leadership and having the organizational chart. So when people review what we are exactly responsible for versus what the superintendent is responsible for and what his roles and duties are is critically important. So people can be clear on what we can and cannot do. And our role is not to run the school division, but to guide using the policies and procedures to guide our school division. The relationship between the board and superintendent, I thought that would be a great section to have in our in our governance manual, or whatever we want to call it, the strategic governance manual, whatever. Board standing and ad hoc committees. I thought that may be a great section to have. The preface, I always chop this word up, but what guides us, what is our mission, what is our purpose, and including the Code of Virginia, what school boards in Virginia do, and to also identify that we are dependent school boards. We are not independent of ourselves. Our beliefs, our vision, strategic plan overview. How do we report our strategic plan goals and the purpose? So those are just some things that I wanted to suggest that we could start with. Those are just suggestions. I'm not saying that we gotta have these things in there, but I just thought that I could bring some homework since we were tasked by our chair, Ms. Jones, to review and be ready to report out. So, and again, I can type this up and send it to the committee, and you all can add or delete, if you like. As a matter of fact, why don't I type this up and send it to Ms. Lilly, and Ms. Lilly can send it to all of us instead of Ms. Jones just sending it to you and having you send it out, because we're all busy during the day.
Thank you so much for that. And we are on the same page, because I agree. I think, being that we are led by the dreams for RPS, the strategic goals, I think that our governance manual should reflect that, and it should align with that. Because if this is going to be our operating manual, or as Ms. Page said, our guiding principles, then that is what we need to be leading. And in the absence of policy, we can't make up what we want to make up. It is here, and now this is what we have to follow. So I do agree, and I love all of these suggestions that you offered, because I do see how they align. strategically and will allow us to be very clear in what our roles are and really break down just some of the confusion around who does what and who's responsible for what. So I'm all for that. And I could see how a lot of these additional, maybe like the ad hoc committees and stuff, we may need to like flesh that stuff out and just make sure that we have a clear distinction of that. But I do think that we're definitely on the right track and have the same vision for how we would like to see this manual kind of materialize. Any other questions? Miss, oh, you say you had a question, Ms. Page? Okay. Yeah. One of the things that I did want to address a little bit though, and just to kind of suggest as a part of, so I guess we could maybe begin thinking about these as, you know, like you said, the preface and then the different chapters are individual goals or however we want to define that. But we don't have anything, which one, it's in the policy that speaks about public comment, but we don't have anything that will go in the manual. And so I do think part of developing this manual is to take a look at those things via policy and see what that states, and then whether or not that needs to be updated and changed. And then that could also kind of lean itself to the manual. And did you all have any other possibly, I guess that would be policies that you think we should look at as a part of this manual? Because I do think that it's important and key to make sure, to Ms. White's point, that the policies have been updated, or even if we need to revisit them, so that when we produce this manual, it's not governed by a policy that may need a change or update. So, Ms. White.
And I'd like to also include that I think when we're actually developing our policy, we need to make sure that we are actually using the regulation, which is the Robert's Rules of Order, so that since we all have a Robert's Rules of Order publication, that we can go back and look at it for ourselves and verify it. So our whatever policy, that statement that we make, it has to correspond with Robert Rules of Order, to make sure that everybody on the board has the Robert Rules of Order, so they can pull that regulation and they can see for themselves.
And if I may, Madam Chair, also along with that, parliamentary procedures, because they go hand in hand. They reference each other, so yes. That's a good point. And while we are, Madam Chair, you made a good point about the public comment where there is no policy currently guiding that. And so when we are beginning to look at that through the work of the policy committee and Ms. Lilly, we may want to have two parts to that, because, you know, with no one, I don't think, could even see a pandemic coming where we had to go virtual, right?
Right.
And so when we're creating that public comment policy, and I know we're all going to keep in mind to maintain the voice of our constituents, but also have a policy for face-to-face and a policy for virtual public comment, because those are going to be operating differently. We may have virtual meetings due to the weather. Instead of canceling a meeting, we may have, it may snow or ice really bad, and we'll have a virtual meeting instead of canceling that meeting to continue to include public comment. So just something, food for thought for us to think about as you indicated, and I love the analogy, flush out some of our policies as we revise and update. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harris Mohammed. And I guess as we are thinking about what we would like to maybe see in this manual, what are you all's thoughts about professional development and how that could look inside the manual as well?
That's a good
I'd
idea.
love to hear some feedback on that.
Yeah, I think including professional development, I think is very important because that's how, we are able to hone in on our being a true governance team and attending Virginia School Board Association. That is a part of our professional development. Just one of the pieces. The great Council of Great City Schools, different conferences like that. Those are professional developments because it reinforces the purpose and our role as school board members. So I think that's imperative that we include that information regarding professional development.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Lilly, you had a comment?
Yes, it was back on. I'm sorry, Ms. White. I sent the message to you because you were the last person that spoke. But nonetheless, a couple things on the Robert's Rules piece. Certainly, you as a body need to first decide that is what you're going to operate under, right? So that's one of your policy statements too. We're going to operate under Robert's Rules, and then we can conform your norms, your policies to Robert's Rules. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, just to clarify, there is a public comment policy that exists, right? But you're right, Dr. Harris Muhammad, who thought about the virtual world to pivot from what we had on the books of how it looked in person to that. So certainly we can add those pieces to, or change the policies. But some of the things that you're talking about, the list that you had for your suggestions, not that your policy is your policy. So I'm not saying that but it can't change, and that's true. But you all may want to have benefit from working from what's there, because you have policies on a lot of the things that you mentioned in the categories that are existing policies. Of course, we know about the standing committee's policy, board, what the vice chair is, what the chair does. All of those things are your policies, which if you want to put more meat to them, fine, and then we can incorporate that into the board governance. The professional development, you have a policy on professional development. Again, it's subject to change as you guys see fit and what the need is. But I want to just encourage you to take a look at your bylaws as part of your exercise here. Take a look at your policies and your bylaws and see what you can use from that, what you would like to change from that as kind of a starting point as well. And then it all comes together, and it won't overlap anymore. They'll just be companion pieces that you can kind of work from, because your policies may not be as detailed as your governance manual, which may have your procedures underneath all of those. You have your policy statements, but then you have point one, for example. What comes to my mind is your district activity request. You send the district activity request to the clerk. That's step one. Step two is this. Step three is this. Those are more procedural, which would be akin to, would be, good to have in your governance, your operational manual too. So you have your policy statement. That's your overall statement. We put enough detail in it to get your sentiments as a board and your philosophy and how you want to operate. But the meat and the details, could go in your procedure, your operational manual as well.
So. To clarify,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, to clarify, Ms. Lilly, I was just saying we could add what you were just talking about. Yeah, add those sections in the
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But I was just making sure that everybody was aware that if you want to start from scratch, that's great, but you don't have to, because you already have these things that you can kind of use, right, to kind of springboard from. So, and to the extent that there's a gap, because I think that's the area too, we need to also identify gaps where there, where we need policy where we don't currently have, right, or we need a norm where we don't currently, those types of things.
So no need to reinvent the wheel.
Right. I was just making sure everybody knew that.
Yeah, I like that. As Ms. Page said, no need to. Yeah. No.
Yeah, and I think the whole, to Ms. Lilly's point, is like operating norms, right? We would then look at what our norms are, and then the operating norm may or may not be a policy per se, but then whatever we decide would then go under that in the manual. So we would have still a policy that says operating norms, but then as in the manual, it'll have operating norms with the procedures per se. So I do think that we do have a lot of the work that is already pretty much done. It's just really like organizing it and really figuring out and maybe deciding which format we want to use. And like you said, some of them were books, some of them were really cut and dry and simple. I do, again, like the strategic vision one, because even though that's work that we already have, so it's kind of just really moving that information over. But I also think that that information, because we talk a lot about the public, it also helps if this manual is, somewhere that is visible, that folks can then kind of connect the dots. So I think for the purpose of design and what that will look like, we can begin starting maybe by revisiting the policies. You said that Dr. Harris Muhammad, I apologize. You said you were going to send your piece over to Ms. Lilly, and then you would get it all to us. And so how do you all want to, oh, I'm so sorry. Ms. White had a question. I apologize. Ms. White.
That's okay, keep talking. I was gonna ask Miss Lilly a question, but, and Miss Lilly, when you were indicating about don't reinvent the wheel, I agree with you, because that's why I was saying, I know that number one, it just needed more meat to it. But like I was writing down things that I'm glad that Dr. Muhammad was saying something about the communication and I was writing down things earlier too. I was just brainstorming, and I like to see where we have something that deals with, first of all, like our day-to-day operations, like she had said, and then have the school board meeting, how it's supposed to be conducted with our chair, how it goes, the flow of it, and then as like she was saying, the communication, because it could be communications in several different ways. It could be like the superintendent communication. Well, he will forward to the board weekly or bi-weekly documents or requests, or however that should say is. And general communication, how each other communicate to each other. And then the emergency communication that she was also talking about. If we have an emergency, we can either do it by email or Zoom. So I would like to see that. And also I would like to see some examples. I know that BSBA, when we first came on board, their operating procedure had a sheet in there that had, these are the things that a school board should know, a school board member should know. And I like to see that in our hands, because when we transfer or when someone is off the board, a new member come in, these are the things that they should know. How many schools, how many different things that they should know that wasn't briefed back to me that I had to actually go find out for myself or already know. But the average person who comes on the board, they didn't get that. I mean, I didn't see that. I didn't see that communication to them. So those things that are already listed, those basic things that they should know should be in that book already. And maybe a sample sheet with some type of sample sheet of it already.
And Ms. White, for the record, I was one that stated no need to reinvent the wheel.
Well, I don't know. I know somebody said it today.
Yeah, I said it, so I just
okay. I'll give you credit.
Make that clarity.
Ms. Page said, "Do not invent the wheel." Well,
no, reinvent the wheel.
Don't reinvent the wheel. You said that. I might have said that.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Ms. Page said it.
I think none of, yes, I think none of us want to reinvent the wheel.
No.
But what I do think we all want to do is really, just kind of show and do what we know we're capable of doing, and using, this governance committee as an opportunity to not try to, it's not like we're using this to like shut anything down or to like control anything. It's really just us working together to really build the governance team. And sometimes you have to break the teams up just to be able to get the work done. And so I just think, I look at this as just a subset of the board to be able to get the work done so that we can continue to be effective in all the things that we are doing. So I think we should maybe take some time to go back, like I said earlier, revisit the policies. We'll wait on the email from Miss Lilly. We can use, because when is the actual VSBA norms is the 22nd, correct? And then our next meeting is the 24th.
Is that, that is the next meeting? I need to make sure that's noticed.
Is which
24th.
is it the
Yes,
24th?
is
I
the
believe?
22nd and ours is the 24th. You
Yeah.
said 4th, which is that Thursday. And VSBA is the 22nd at 5:00 p.m.
Okay. So how about we reconnect? Let me see. Or how about we take all of the information and our suggestions that we all will be looking at, the policies, and we have all that together by the 18th? Is that a good enough time to be able to review policy, kind of look at?
No, it's not. We got 4 things to look at from the school board that we're supposed to be doing homework from. We're supposed to be turning those 4 things in, 3 things.
If you have comments or revisions to any of those policies. Ms.
Yeah.
Adesco, Dr.
That's
F.
right, from the board meeting.
Oh,
Right.
From the
yeah.
board meeting, yeah, it's
That's
4
right.
different, yeah, it's 4.
So can we add the governance policy to one more?
No, no,
Can we add the
No.
governance policy to one more?
no.
Ms. Lilly?
If it helps, what I could do is based on, and Dr. Harris Muhammad, I did jot down your suggestions, and I have all the notes from the meeting, but I jotted down your suggestions. And so I can pull the policies that I believe are most relevant to those areas, right? And package them and email them to you each, so that you have them at least there and you don't have to go hunt for them, if that's would be helpful. And then they put in some that, I would submit that the whole bylaws may be helpful in some sense, but those that you talked about, communications, Ms. White, because I think that there's a board. Now, again, I'm not saying that they can't be worked on or improved, but there may be a policy that I believe that there's already a policy for board superintendent communications and things like that. That you can at least see and work on. Professional development, the role of the chair, vice chair, and
That's all in there.
And to the extent of how meetings, how you operate your meetings. Now, again,
That can go in the manual.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. But, again, it could be changed and it may not look like, because we're all virtual and all this kind of stuff now, but there is a framework that, so I'll pull those out, and it may be easier just for you to, page through them on the email versus hunt them out. So I can do that.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll wait on that information from you, Ms. Lilly. What about the 21st, Ms. White? And I'm not suggesting that we have another meeting. I'm just suggesting that we all review the policies by the 21st. We know we have the norms by the 22nd. And so I think by the 24th, we'll be able to, make a connection between the policy and the norms. And then I think that will allow us to be able to put, at least a draft of the manual together before, the July 1st deadline.
Ms. Jones, what about the 20th? Because I know the 21st is the graduations.
The
and a lot of people
graduation.
will probably be at the
Okay.
graduations. I know it's 3 of them there. What about, Ms. Lilly, you can give it to me by the 20th? Well, it won't take me long to look through it, but I mean, are you saying the 21st is a meeting or 20 to look at it? What are you?
No, I wasn't suggesting a meeting. I was just suggesting that we look at it, jot whatever notes down that we know we want to maybe discuss. And then we'll have our meeting on the 22nd with VSBA. And then we should be able to have those norms finalized. And then by the 24th, we'll have the policies, we'll have the norms, and then we should be able to have a draft, I would think, within the next week of a draft manual.
So Ms. Lily, when should I look for your,
That's what I was gonna suggest. I will do my best to get it to you by Monday. Is that fair? Because I just need to pull it together, and I would like to say I will go in and do it tomorrow, but I know that I have some other obligations. But if I can, and I may even do it over the weekend, so I will get it to you no later than Monday. And again, this package would just be what, based on the conversation today, some of the policies that you all already have on the books, subject to change and review, that may be helpful as a springboard in your conversation.
Correct. Does that sound good, everybody?
sounds good.
Yes, sounds like a plan.
Okay, so we'll receive the documents from Ms. Lily by Monday. We'll review by the 20th, just to put some dates on that. We have the VSBA on the 22nd.
Well, you know the 20th, excuse me. You know the 20th is Father's Day.
Mhm.
Okay, it's not gonna take me that long to look at.
Yeah,
I'm just making
yeah,
you all aware of that.
okay.
Yes, it's Father's Day.
So do all your stuff before.
So we need to do it before 11:59 on the 20th.
Exactly.
On the 19th.
Right, the
By
19th.
11:59 on the 19th. And then our next meeting will be on the 24th, which is, as we will finalize the norms, and then we'll finalize the norms, on the 22nd. Our meeting will be on the 24th. And then we'll look to put a draft together. We'll pull up my calendar one more time. I'm sorry. We'll look to put a draft together by the 29th. I'm gonna push it and say the 29th. Because again, we have most of the stuff already, so it shouldn't be that hard. It's just really getting it all organized. And so if we work together when we talk on the 24th as to who can put what pieces together, I'm sure we should be able to have a draft. So we'll say draft by the 29th. All righty. Any other questions?
No,
What-
this was good.
What time are you looking at on the 24th? I do recall now there was an email about,
Yes.
because I think that the evaluation committee is going to be meeting on the 24th as well. So what time are you starting this particular meeting for board governance?
Did we say, what time does your evaluation committee end, Ms. Page?
6 to 7, isn't that right, Miss Lily?
That sounds
have
about
it.
right, 6 to 7.
Or was it 5:30 to?
So ours is- ours-
It's no earlier than 5:30 and no later
Right.
than 7. I do know.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so I said ours would be, the evaluation, 6:45.
45, you at
Okay.
6:45.
Yeah, I said 6:45 following the
That's right.
evaluation committee.
Okay, and I apologize because I did see the earlier email, but then I didn't see the resolution. So 6:45 on 6/24 would be the board governance meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, that's exactly right. Our meeting starts at 5:30.
Yeah, and so I wanted to give folks a break to get a glass of water or something. All righty, well, thank you so much for your time this evening, and I'm looking forward to building this manual with you all. I think it's gonna be great. And if you have any
Absolutely.
questions or anything in between, feel free to reach out to myself or Miss Lily. We're gonna work this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You all have a great
Good
evening.
weekend.
All right.
Yeah. have a good
weekend.
evening.
You
Okay.
too. Bye-bye.